for coordinated service, for during policy development, for during the times when we're coming up with stuff as staff. It would be really helpful. We work together as a team because we bring different disciplines together, different backgrounds, and we're effective. I think we could provide better service directly to you, Council, but really to the corporation and thereby to the citizenry by having a staff lawyer who could sit in on any number of discussions, on any number of teams, and add that perspective at the start, rather than go 3/4 of the way or 90% of the way through the process and then run it by legal, which, by the way, means external counsel. Our external counsel do a very good job. To be abundantly clear, there are no complaints from your senior team or even the level down about the quality of work done by the law firms we have on retainer. This is not an attack upon them, their skill, knowledge, or integrity. We would not be able to end those, we wouldn't look to end those relationships even if we could. One person can't do all of the work. But there are enormous savings capacity, and I say this respectfully, but it's kind of an identified skills shortage in this organization. When I'm in the room, I can give advice to the best of my skill and ability, but I can't really back it up with complete work product. And a staff lawyer could. The person, if you approve this measure, the person's office would be what we currently call the OMB office, just the other side of the wall there, down that hallway. It would be a direct report into my office. We have adequate administrative support in the office that's shared by the Office of the Mayor and myself to help assist that person, whoever he or she might be. That's the proposition to you in a nutshell. Anyway, it's offered as a savings, as an attempt to achieve savings, not as a service enhancement, although I do think by definition it will be that too. Subject to questions, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to our County Manager. Do you, when I look across the board here of all the staff and all the different implications they run into, do you feel that there are lawyers out there that have that broad-based knowledge that they would reduce our $500,000 substantially? Do you think that, you know, like you hear of the specialties in law, but do you feel there's that broad knowledge out there?
I do. If you talked to me 10 years ago, it was me, in all seriousness, and I'm not unique in the province. City of Brantford has 4 people on staff who do this really well. City of London has a staff complement of 10 in-house counsel. 6 or 7 of them would do it really well. Chatham-Kent has 3 on staff. 2 of them would do it really well. See where I'm going with that. There are a number of, so there's an association of municipal in-house counsel in Ontario. I've been a member of that for about 15 years now. It leads to a population of, I think, about 300 at the moment. And that's just people who employed directly by municipalities and have the good relevant experience. But I think the better answer to you, sir, and the reason why I try to build some flexibility into this, you see there's a salary description for a sort of more junior solicitor and a salary description for a more senior. I call them solicitor and county solicitor. County solicitor normally being an honorific you have to work up to and earn, frankly. So that's how why I've structured it that way. And suggested either planning or labor and employment, because those are the areas where we spend the most money, although they're not the only areas where we spend money. My actual thought on attracting someone is you kind of do, I'm a big football guy, and I like the teams that draft for the best talent. And here's the thing, the most talented person, if he or she is really good at law, I don't care if they're a labor lawyer. I can help teach them, they can learn some planning and come up that way. I don't care if they're a really great planning lawyer. We can help teach them, they can learn some labor, they can learn some of the other things. So there's an advantage to hiring a specialist, there's an advantage to hiring a really good generalist. If you're talented, the thing is, if you come from private practice and you're an expert in labor, they'll know nothing about the rest of the municipal operation. It'll be great for one division, it'll be not so great for the others, it'll take some time to learn. There's a trade-off there. The key thing is finding someone with a bunch of talent who wants to commit to being part of this excellent community we know as Norfolk. And that I'm extremely confident we can do.
Okay, you summed it up at the end there. That's what I was looking for. My other question, I have 2 more questions, Mr. Chairman. One is, would this person require additional staff for support, and where would they work? What office would they work under, or where?
Sir, at the moment, my office, if I may refer to it that way, the mayor and I share a pool of 2 individuals, and we believe that if we are efficient in the use of them as a resource, that we can put the person in the office on the other side of that, to my left, you're right, there's a available office there, and that he or she could access that pool of staff for assistance to the extent a lawyer will need some assistance. But we believe we have adequate staffing in place, that we don't need to hire anyone else. They won't need a full-time assistant. They can access that pool, and we already have office space available. So I don't anticipate any other costs around the position.
Okay, and my last question is, do you have a policy or practice in place when staff look for legal assistance? Do they have to do any kind of requisition through yourself, or how do they currently work right now? I notice in many cases our staff refer that they run it by our county solicitor. Like, is that going through you, or is that just something they decide to do on their own?
There isn't actually a straight-up answer to your question. We have a number of I haven't instituted any new process since I've become employed here. Let me start off with that. To the extent that the people I work with are the senior leadership team, a number of them now, when there's sort of a question of general application or something that one would think reasonably I can provide, I am asked questions and I try to provide those answers. But broadly speaking, it's very hard to compare what we need in the labor and employment world. Sometimes we need an instantaneous answer. Other times, frankly, it can wait months. The planning world moves a lot more slowly, as we're all learning. So the question of whether or not you can call directly, at the end of the day, each area does have some money in its budgets for legal services, whatever they call it, and the general managers make those decisions when their management team comes to them and says, I need help with X, I think we should engage our external lawyers. Those managers who we pay for skill, knowledge, and decision-making make those decisions. So sometimes the answer is yes, you can call. Other times it's come to me. Other times they know the answers themselves. But there's a reason why every department, not every division, but certainly every department, has access to funds that allow them to go to external legal counsel to get answers or service to further their operations. This would change that model. The default now, assuming council endorses this, we will have a county solicitor. So before someone goes outside for legal advice, and again, I can't say, if we hire a planning lawyer, for instance, I would expect the default, particularly for Mr. Baird's area, will be to start with him or her. And only if it can't be handled, et cetera, would it go outside. Flip it around and assume it's a labor and employment lawyer. I'm hoping that the Human Resources Department, for instance, in fact, I'm more than hoping, it will be an expectation, they have to start there, and whatever can't be handled for whatever reason will still trickle out. But the default is you start with the staff, you start with the free staff resource that hopefully you're already working with, frankly.
Okay, and if I may, Mr. Chairman, one other thing. Like, you've obviously put some good thought into this. Did you also think of a contract position, or it was a straight-out hire?
This is Exhibit A of when not to use a contract.
Okay.
Any person of quality, and I mean real quality, which is what we're looking to hire, he or she, assuming they're in private practice, they've built up a practice, right? They've built up a business. Why would you abandon a business that's paying you well, that you've taken for a contract? I never would. I wouldn't have come here for a contract. So the people I would attract with a contract are exactly who I don't want to hire. We're after commitment. We're after good levels of skill. We're after hopefully some community integration. We're offering, quite frankly, attractive salary. I'd like to suggest reasonable salary at any rate, benefits, pension, all the rest of it, and the chance to be part of a team and something more than yourself. But if we turn this into a contract position, I'd never hire the quality I'm looking to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Wells, Columbus, and Black.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll keep my question very short. Thank you very much. I think you've done a fine job of explaining why you think we should hire this person. There are other municipalities who have chosen not to, and I would like you to put your hat on and suggest why they have chosen not to, if you don't mind, please.
I think when the decision not to hire is made, there is, rightly or wrongly, and a lot of it depends on local circumstance, I think there's in a number of sort of smaller rural areas in particular, there's a default distrust, animus, hostility, choose your word, towards increasing staff complement. I grew up in Timmins, Ontario. I feel like I can speak of it with some degree of authority. I suspect quite strongly that played a large role in the municipal decision. That they want to think that spending $500,000 for several years running for them was some sort of blip, and that they're going to go back to, that they're going to go back to only 300,000, and somehow that's okay. At 300,000, there's still a business case here. I mean, quite frankly, at $250,000, there'd still be a business case if we were spending half what we currently are. But I think just the favorite or the default is to not hire and not increase staff complement. And I think, I say this respectfully, but sometimes that overturns the reason. I think there's a very good business case for both of those. I don't live in those communities, maybe I shouldn't speak out of turn. But the numbers, when you look around the number of municipalities in Ontario that do have staff lawyers, and really, it's everyone but one who's bigger than us has gone through this analysis, and they found it to be compelling. And they not only did they continue to hire, Middlesex this year went from 2 to 3. Chatham last year went from 2 to 3. They're increasing because they're finding significant savings, and it's the best kind of savings. It's levy dollars. And that's, well, obviously it's worth its weight in gold, or in lawyer, as the case may be.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave, I noticed, and you mentioned 2015, the county spent $514,000, and 2016, $518,000. Do you have any indication of how much of that over the course of the last 2 years would have been covered by an in-house lawyer versus an out-of-house lawyer?
Out of house?
So there's a good news. I can't give you an exact figure, but what I can tell you, and the reason why I'm strongly suggesting either labor and employment or sort of planning background, is that you can target your spending, we can target our spending to the areas that are most expensive. So as an example, I went to Lambton County, and what I started doing was handling a bunch of the civil litigation, the $400 an hour kind of work. And what I said was, you know what? Literally every lawyer in this municipality can handle real estate. Every time we want to expand a road, take some land, buy, sell a property, that transactional work can be done for well under $200 an hour. So I farmed all that out. I couldn't do all the work. So I farmed out the $150 an hour stuff, and I kept the $400 an hour stuff. Maximize, because once I'm salaried, I'm a sunk cost, right? You're going to pay me the same whether I work really hard that day or I don't, or whether I'm in court that day or I'm in my office. It's all the same cost. So the two statements to you are, I would aim to target the most expensive kind of work to deliver the most value, although I can't tell you which files in the future. I mean, we all hope we're not going to be sued again. We all hope we're not going to be dragged to the OMB or its successor, whatever the next thing's going to be called. We all hope we're not going to go to the Labor Relations Board or the Human Rights Tribunal. But I'm not offering you odds. Realistically, life will carry on. There will be future conflicts. There will be future legal cases. So we can be smart about using the resource to try to save the most expensive external work and to deliver the greatest savings possible. But I'm talking about savings on things that haven't happened yet. So I don't want to be misleading or unfair. We just know, based on history, we know it's going to continue into the future.
Councillor Black.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much through you to County Manager. And I'm just wondering about our existing legal contract for legal services and whether there's any type of a clause in that contract restricting us from doing what you suggest, like, kind of a union outsourcing type situation.
As a starting point, we have more than one law firm on contract, so that we're abundantly clear. We keep referring only to one firm, but the answer is more than one. Secondly, we are uncommon amongst mid to large size municipalities in not having staff lawyers. And literally everywhere I've worked, there's been a staff lawyer by definition. And they all had external legal spends. As the report says, it's not going to drive it down to zero. So if we go forward with this, we're just doing what all of their other medium to large municipal clients have already done at various points in time in their history. What it means is that that staff lawyer really becomes the point of contact for most interactions with the outside law firm. He or she is expected, amongst other things, is expected to manage those relations. And this, of course, would not end our usage of them. Like we say, any files you're already handling, it would not be efficient to bring someone in at the 11th hour and say, oh, we're going to handle that by staff. No. If you've been working on a file for months or years, you should carry on. We need continuity of legal representation is important. This is not meant to end contractual relations, and it will not do so. It may mean we send less work out in the future, and I hope it does. That's one of the ways we help deliver savings. But it's not going from 100 down to 0. It's going from 100 down to something less than 100, depending on the nature of the work and the nature of the lawyer we employ, and then variables enter in. But this is not meant to end any of those very valued relations with legal service providers who are quite skillful and with whom everyone in this room is happy with the service, to reiterate. They are very content with the status quo. It's just the status quo is too expensive.
Chairman, I would be prepared to move the recommendation in the report if you would receive it.
Well, I have a number of speakers yet as well. Mayor Luke and then Councillor Height.
Well, I'll ask my question, if I may, with your permission, Mr. Chair, to our county manager, and then I'll wait and speak to the motion at a later time. Through the chair to the county manager, back to some of your comments and some of your cost analysis, I guess I'll call it that. You have mentioned enormous savings if we go this route. I believe those were your words. And I'm going to use just to round these figures off. Say our legal fees now are, well, they are, but say 500,000. We now move towards, if we approve this, a staff solicitor, we'll call it that, or whatever you like, say 150. I'm just rounding it off. It's probably a little bit higher with benefits, but say 150. You say in the report, and again, you say at the bottom of page 2 of 5, that the staff lawyer could save approximately 200,000. Are you saying that with a savings possibly of 200, a cost of 150, for a salary is 350, our current is 500, that our external costs could, and nobody knows what we hit from year to year, month to month, but we could be spending maybe as little as $150,000 for external? I'm just wondering how these numbers add up.
So the only awkward time is during the period of transition. Appreciating that for a lot of very good reasons, we wouldn't want to take back any files from our external legal providers. Okay. So during the time of transition, any new stuff would go to the county solicitor, or the solicitors, the case may be. But during that transition time, you're still spending external, and now you've got a staff cost. So it's sort of awkward for the first few months. When you work through those things, so you give it, say, some things are quick, or 3 and 4 months, and others take a year. Hastings Drive has taken more than a year. You see where I'm right? But as you work through that, the savings, that's when you start really enjoying those savings. Do I know what the exact end number is going to be? I don't, but that's partially because I don't know whether the best candidate is going to be a junior or a more senior solicitor, and I don't know where his or her area of expertise is going to be labor. So I'm trying not to speak out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm also trying to be fair. I am exceptionally confident that six-figure savings can be delivered to you. I can't tell you if that's going to be in the labor budget. Maybe it could be that in the future Candy Webb's spending goes down enormously in those areas, or not touched at all. It could be in Mr. Baird's area, or it could be taken, because I can't know that, I can't give you the straight answer. But
Mr. Chair, I got my answer, and I'm really asking in a more detailed way, your professional, through the chair, your professional opinion is that with an in-house solicitor, the job will be done, and there will be probably savings overall from the 515, 518, and simply the benefit of having somebody very close by to handle things, I don't want to say quicker, but to some regards quicker, correct?
that is exactly the value proposition. Save and accept on top of that, I think we can get rid of some of our insurance spending. We've held off on the insurance report to you to see what council's opinion would be on this, because it'll change the nature of what we propose for our future relationship with our insurance company. So I think there's additional savings on top, but yes, sir, you've got it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, you touched on it briefly. You mentioned that files that are currently outstanding with our external counselors, you wouldn't bring some of them back in-house? What would be the reason for that?
If you've been working on something for 3-4 years, and we have a number of files older than that, I haven't been exposed to all of our files yet. This is week 11. But I've seen a number in my 11 weeks here that are multiple years old. There is just no efficiency to be had in pulling those files back from people who've lived in them and been elbow deep in them and have them 3/4 of the way through the process. Beyond that, we also want to maintain relationships with our external legal service providers that have been developed over years, that are valued, whose advice has been well received and has helped this corporation, I hope we're moving towards thriving, but certainly carry on its operations. So there's a pragmatic business purpose. And certainly in the initial, I can say this as a fairly new employee for you, it takes some period of time to sort of acclimatize, adjust, to figure out the lay of the land, particularly for this person, it's going to be a whole new job. I mean, like it's a whole new office. He or she will be the first incumbent. And it takes a little while also, I say this respectfully, of staff. You have to learn how to work with a lawyer. And no one in Norfolk, we're older than Confederation, ever has before. We've never had a staff lawyer, so no one here has ever, that skill has never been demanded of anyone. There's going to be some adjustment period all around. And during that time, I don't think it's particularly efficient. I want the person to focus on functionality and integration in the initial few months. So there'll be a lot of internal focus for the first little while getting started. And you add those two things together, and we would comply with any instruction of counsel, of course, but if I had my druthers, I would not try to take work that's being well done by external counsel back in the first few, where they're most of the way towards completion. I'd rather have that person integrate well, take on new files, and grow and become part of this corporation to add much better service in a much faster manner than try to spend months reading old files to get up to speed.
Okay, thank you. I know as a counselor, I don't know that I've ever seen how many cases that our actual lawyers do deal with on a regular basis, so I can't really make an educated decision that way. But I do remember during our budget session that this council approved a hiring freeze on all new positions. So I'm not sure how we get around that. Is it a vote of reconsideration, or better for me would be, tell me right now which position you are going to eliminate to make room for this? What efficiency have you found to compensate for this?
Your staff have been interpreting the directive you passed as part of the budget for a hiring freeze to imply that they are able to hire someone leaves, someone dies, replacement, and that otherwise they have to come to you for your consideration and approval, and that we all, up to and including myself, lack the authority to create new positions, even if we can find a magic pot of money somewhere, to hire people without your permission. So given that interpretation, we are following the letter and the spirit by coming to you. I think there's a business case here. I think there are significant savings to be achieved. If you agree with that, probably you'll endorse this. But I feel like I'm in compliance by coming here and asking your permission and your consideration. Certainly, at least in fairness, the motion did not say you have to come and throw someone overboard if you want to add someone. That's slightly a little further than the motion went. Cheers.
Appreciate that. Now, you mentioned you want the ability to choose between a junior or a senior solicitor. I'm more in favor of the senior solicitor. So how would we work that?
If I may, sir, I don't want to prejudice the hiring process, but as a default and at an intellectual level, I too would prefer to hire a senior counsel so that he or she can hit the ground running harder, faster, and provide more value. So total agreement. Where I envision this advertisement going, assuming council approves it, would be to post the county solicitor job, the higher paying one, and to add a sentence to the effect of lesser qualified candidates will be considered at an appropriate starting salary. So that, and to get back to my love of the NFL, we're going to draft the best, most talented person possible, and if he or she is 5 years out and needs to be a solicitor rather than county solicitor, I can mentor, if that's the best person, but ideally, yes, we'd like to hire more senior, assuming you approve that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Black has moved. If there are no other questions, that staff report CM 1702, proposed staff lawyer position, be received as information, and that county council instruct the county manager to proceed with option 4, with funding for the new staff lawyer to come from the contingency reserve for the balance of 2017 and primary funding from budgetary decreases from all county departments in 2018 and beyond. Councillor Black and then Mayor Luke. Well, okay.
Speaking to my motion, I think it's a good idea for all of the reasons that have been given by the county manager in his report. He cites eventual cost savings and on our current legal contract. And the thing that we have argued in the past couple of times is more local input, and hopefully a person that we did hire would be from this area or live in this area and be part of our community. And I also see a better, a more efficient way of staff dealing with legal staff, legal contracts. I've spoken to many of the staff members over at the new Robinson Street facility, the old American Can, and everyone I talked to said that they have increased their ability to communicate with their fellow colleagues. Now, instead of being all over the place, that they can just walk down the hall, human resources all in one spot on the top floor, and the second floor we've got economic development, we've got planning, we've got building inspectors, we've got bylaw enforcement. They all can easily communicate with each other, and I see this with the hiring a new position as a lawyer for the county manager and the staff in this building and the mayor. It'd make it a lot easier, a lot more, an increased ability to communicate and operate more efficiently and effectively. Thank you.
Mayor Luke.
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you very much, and I know that when all of us read this, the wheels kicked in to do some serious thinking, because this is something that this county has not experienced, Norfolk County has not experienced in the time that we've been a county on our own over the last 16 years or thereabouts. I am going to support this. I believe the savings are there. And as the county manager said, he can't give us the exact figure if we were to put somebody in place, say September or the end of the year or whatever. Of course not. But it's pretty obvious to me that the work this staff solicitor, I'll call it that, would be engaged in would be work that would not be farmed out or shipped off to our external. And as the county manager says, affirm that we're absolutely delighted with their, at least I am, I'll speak for myself, and I think staff will agree, been delighted with the service they've given us. But there's a big difference between farming it out at $200 an hour versus, well, the report says somewhere between 50 and 76, so $65, let's say, on average. There's a huge savings there. I would think if this passes, I would hope that come budget time in January, if we see an increase in one FTE with a budgeted amount for salary and benefits and whatever else, I would think, as reported in the recommendation here, that we will also see budget decreases from our county departments, because this is what we're told will happen, and I believe it will happen. And it's important that it does happen, that we're not adding on to the $515,000 a year. This will reduce that by probably, once it's up and running, at least a couple $100,000, thus we're into a better position. So sometimes I have to put my trust into staff, and I personally believe, and I've thought about this for some time, Mr. Chair, that we probably will benefit greatly from an in-house solicitor. I do take the opportunity when I go to meetings with other mayors, and I'll be quite honest with you, most of my talk to are quite surprised this county does not have its own in-house solicitor. I've never heard anyone say it's not working for them, it isn't saving money for them. It's been a good thing for them to have that. If you can get some work done at $65 an hour from our coffers as opposed to $200, doesn't take long to pay for itself. Thank you.
Councillor Wells?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, every time I sit at this table, I always hear the same refrain: cost saving, cost saving, cost saving. And yet, every time I go to the budget time, I never see those cost savings, because the taxpayers are paying more and more and more. So I don't know what happens to these magical cost savings that we're always talking about. So my question to you, through you to the county manager, is he's coming here with a product that he's trying to sell, which is fair. He has every right to do that. When will we actually see, and how will you show us that there are actually cost savings? Not just verbally, I mean in writing, black and white. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There can be a number of different answers to that question. Firstly, and to be abundantly clear, we will be driving down the legal spend in other areas. Depending when the person starts, though, and because there is a transition period, you can't see, January is too soon to deliver entire savings, right? There's got to be a bridge transitional period no matter when a new person starts. So I would expect much larger savings to be delivered in the 19 budget than I would in the 18. That makes sense given transition. That being said, I am aware that Chatham-Kent, for instance, provides a report to its council showing what the lawyers did and what it would have cost, and demonstrating cost savings. And in this instance, if that's a demand or I don't want to create a position, an environment where the person lives in constant fear of every day, whatever value they added. If they do one day of legal training, somehow their job became in jeopardy because they didn't save us $10,000 that day. I don't want to create a negative environment. So I'm trying to be careful how I answer your question. But If you want metrics in the future that demonstrate value and whether or not savings were achieved, I'm sure that can be arranged as part of a budgetary process, as part of financial process, part of demonstrate. What will happen if you approve this is the spending in my office, which is fairly small, it's only 3 full-time staff and some associated expenses, is going to go up exponentially, right? You're going to see incremental savings around the corporation, and I'm hoping to deliver significant savings in the insurance area, the intangible. We'll be able to demonstrate that, and I'm prepared to report back to council to that effect, but I would be very wary of any motion that required in this one area us to demonstrate daily, weekly, quarterly, a specific target of savings, because that person, we should use them whatever the most efficient way is possible. And sometimes that may be taking up cases outright. Other times it might be providing advice in-house. So I would be happy to report to you specific metrics, but I don't want to create a regime of, frankly, inadvertent terror, which is, I'm sure, not your intention, but could be the outcome.
Mr. Chair, I certainly don't want to put any fear in anyone. However, this is being sold on the basis that there will be cost savings. And all I'm saying is, show us those cost savings. And if not next year, then the year after. That's all I'm saying. And if you can't show them as cost savings, then you shouldn't be promoting this product.
Councillor Brunton?
Well, I think my question's been answered. I'm going to support the position, but I would like to see some, and I agree, it might take some time, but I would like to see some reporting that identifies the true cost savings. Thank you.
James?
If I may, through the chair, what we could do as part of the budget process, maybe not for the 2018 budget, but for the 2019 budget, we can always add a schedule as an attachment to the overall tax operating budget and show all the decreases that we would make with the legal fee budget areas versus the other areas, and also have actuals in there, so we can have that as part of the annual budget process, if that's what council prefers.
Councillor Columbus, and then Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too will be supporting the recommendation, and I believe that there are savings to be realized. And even our own legal firms, I think from time to time I've noticed that there's probably junior lawyers working on the file, but when it comes to delivering the message to us, it's probably the senior lawyer that mostly comes. So I think a junior lawyer will offset some of the cost. Now, when exactly, I'd like to see this move very slow rather than quick. And, you know, we're into a summer recess right now for a lot of people on holidays and that. When do you actually anticipate, Dave, that this person would be in place and on stream?
Councillor, I take your point, and I too would prefer the person to not be starting tomorrow, for instance. Assuming council approved this, we'd put ads out in about a month. We'd look to do some hiring in late August, early September, and look to have someone, and then negotiating periods with lawyers are more difficult than with a number of other professions because of they're expected to give more notice before they leave other employment because of the lengthy, and it takes a long time to get people up to speed on files. Mm-hmm. If someone could start in October, November, firstly, it would only hit the levy a little bit, but that would give him or her a period of time to start familiarizing, and we could then react better to the budgets, the proposed budgets for the various departments for next year, because we'd know what kind of lawyer we'd hire. So it would be important for them to start this calendar year, but if we could put it off and we control that process to well into the fall, I think that delivers the best of both worlds, and that would be the plan.
Okay, so there wouldn't be much budget impact on 2017.
That's correct, and also whatever new files we had coming in November and December, we'd hand to him or her.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sonnenberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be supporting this. We're going into new territory here, and I think we're going in the right direction. We've talked about the hourly rates and the cost savings that can be had, et cetera. But there's one thing I don't think we can measure, is having the person here in the building for convenience and proximity. It's something that will just throw a whole new light on our legal needs. So I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
I have one question. The question is this: how long do they stay with either a municipality or another entity or what? Is there a lot of change, I guess? To get, once you've been with let's say you've been here with Norfolk County for 5 years, and all of a sudden you have a different position that you want to have. Is that something that happens quite a lot?
Well, I suppose in short answer to you, I'm on my third municipality in 15 years. I don't know if I'm a good barometer or not. I look back at the City of London Legal Department of 10. 6 of the lawyers who were there when I joined that, 6 of the 10 are still that were there when I joined the department 15 years ago. 4 are new. So of that population, on a population of 10, more than half have stayed for 15 years. Just under half have used it as a stepping stone onto bigger, better things, or different things. Maybe we shouldn't insult the City of London. On the one hand, you have educated, skilled labor that can and will go elsewhere if we find our wages to be uncompetitive or our work environment to be below average. Frankly, this is a learning organization that's done a lot of positive. I personally found it highly attractive and fought pretty hard to come join it. I think provided we stay somewhere near the 50th percentile in our in retention and our pay scale, that we will be an attractive spot for any number of people. I hope to get a candidate who wants to make a long-term contribution. But in the event we fail in that and the person's here 3, 4, 5 years, then I'm quite confident we'll find someone else. If we're a median paying employer, this is a great place to live. This is a really good environment to work, an employer to work for. We will get someone good and talented. I have no doubt.
Thank you. No more questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to staff report DSC 1755, proposed renaming of Old Dump Road.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Just while Rich Roberts joins me here, I'll just do a quick introduction.
Okay.
Rich is our GIS supervisor. Many of you know him. I'm across paths with him. Rich leads our GIS team, and he has prepared the report this evening. So I'm going to let him present it, and it is in response to a deputation back in February from a resident on Old Dump Road. So, Rich, there you go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so back in February, you had this resident come before you do your deputation. She was hoping to rename the road known as Old Dump Road. Now, I've done a little map there to show you where Old Dump Road is. It's kind of it's a pretty small road. There is no civic address, there's one civic address on this road, and that is for the old dump. So back in 71, this was an old township dump, and back in 71 it was closed. So there's still an address on that property, but if you were to drive down that road today, I doubt you'd see any evidence of the old dump back in the woods there. I took a little bit further look, and there is no real reason to change this road name. I mean, it's totally up to you. If you agree that the street name isn't real palatable, maybe you want to change it. We've given a couple of suggestions there. Normally, we don't like to change road names, and the reason for that is because of confusion with EMS and that sort of thing. But in this case, as I said before, there's only one civic address on this road, and that should not be an issue. So if you wanted to change it, I think in this case it would be suitable. There's a couple of road names that we've thrown on this list, one suggested by Catherine herself. We throw in on Vimy Ridge Road, just kind of commemoration for the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge, and a couple more there in regards to animals or plants that are found in the area. I also took a look at the costs to do this, roughly $362. That's basically to go out there for Public Works, to put in new signs, take down the old ones. There's a couple legal things that have to be done, and on top of that, too, we'd have to write the bylaw, so there's some staff time in there as well.
Councillor Height?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard from a lot of the residents that live over by there, and surprisingly, they like the name of the road the way it is. They feel it's part of their heritage, and if people didn't like it, I don't know, don't drive on the road or whatever, but you wouldn't change the name of Simcoe, because it is part of our heritage, yet there's a Simcoe County, and whenever you're out traveling, people will always ask you, where are you from? If you say Simcoe, they say, oh, up north, that's nice up there. No, not that Simcoe, the other one. And people like this road, and I can't support it, just can't support the change, and I'll make that a motion that the road stays with that name.
Councillor Sonnenberg?
I'll support Councillor Height's motion that we leave the name as is. You know, Tom Howe disposal site in my area is located on Concession 15 in Haldeman County. However, people call it the dump road. Have ever since the dump has been there. There are many roads and places that I know of that do not have flowery names. Thompson Road out of Waterford is also known as Yankee Street, and then it turns into Mud Street. Perney Road for years was called Swamp Road. How appealing is Cemetery Road? Turkeys are one of the dumbest animals on the planet, and yet we have a turkey point. Pretty close to Port Rowan, too. How would you like to be from Dog's Nest, Frogmore, or Rattlesnake Harbor? I live on Pickle Road, of all places. You know, all these names have a history and a reason for being what they are called, and I'm in favor of leaving them as is. Thank you.
Councillor Black?
Yes, I support Councillor Height's motion, and I think it adds character to our community, just like Councillor Sonnenberg does.
Councillor Columbus?
Well, we heard that there's really no addresses on this road, so why do we even have it open? Maybe it should be closed. Is it paved or gravel, or is there a good reason maybe we should sell it off to the abutting owners? Ms. Robinson.
Through the chairman to council, we need to provide access to the properties on that road of which we are the current owner, but we need to maintain it on an open right-of-way in perpetuity.
Well, it looks like all the properties are accessible from north, south, east, west.
With an exception of one piece of property that is in our ownership.
Oh, in our ownership?
Yes.
Okay. What's the
it is the original reason for the name for that road.
Okay. What's the location just before the red line there? It's like a section that goes across that one lot. It looks like a separate property. It's not very big. Just below the red line.
Mr. Chairman, could we just for clarification, Councilor Columbus, you're saying to the below the red line, the Old Dump Road?
Right here.
Okay, that long strip parcel? That is the old dump.
Oh, that's the old dump.
That's the old
Okay.
dump road.
Thank you.
No more questions. I have a motion that reads from Councillor Height that report DSC 1755, proposed renaming of Old Dump Road, be received as information. All those in favor? That is carried. We're moving on to staff report DS 1756, Community Improvement Plan Incentives Status Report. Mr. Baird.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to have Clark speak to this report, but as promised during budget time, we wanted to bring a mid-year status report before you so that you could see how the subscription to the program is working, and quite clearly it's working very well as we've expended the 2017 allocation. Mr. Hoskins is going to speak to some of the grants, where they're coming from. He did suggest that about the agriculture uptake in his presentation earlier, and I'll leave it to Clark for there.
Go ahead, Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mr. Baird. Basically, bringing council up to speed on two regards. One being that the budget of 2017 was $94,500. That budget is affected by previous year grant applications as well, and loan applications. So things that happened in previous years have an effect on future year budgets. So in this case, up until June of 2017, there were 46,000 or so dollars expended on new grants issued in 2017. However, from 2016 and prior, there were grant commitments that had to be honored in the amount of over $48,000. So that basically finishes off the budget for 2017. There is some explanation of the different types of grants in there. The one thing I did want to mention that the total amount that's out right now that has been either granted or loaned is up against a private sector investment of 1.1 million. That's mentioned in the report there. So for the amount of money that Norfolk County is providing in terms of incentives, it's resulting in a 12-fold private sector investment in new types of developments or expanded developments. So I think that's a good news story on that one. We do have a number of applications that have come in and are basically have been received but are on hold because we no longer have any money in our budget to spend. They're all very good projects, and I feel strongly that we should continue to support the private sector and try to continue to have this sort of, multiplier effect in terms of county investment. So in our recommendations, we're requesting that a $60,000 addition be added to the budget so that we can approve these grants and loans, as well as possibly a small amount for some additional that may come in before now and the end of the year. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our colleagues in financial services as well as employee and business services, because both of those departments help us with registering liens on properties and administering loan repayments. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Mayor Luke.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Clark, and I want to just preface the question by saying we were all here last budget in January, where this council and staff, for some reason, we did not set a budget for 2016. And we did not really know what the final number is. And I don't want to go back and revisit that conversation we had. That's in the past, but we know that discussion took place. Do you remember, through the chair, do you remember, Clark, how much the final line was for 2016? I don't believe it's reported in here. I'm thinking it was around $200,000. Don't quote me on that, but do you recall, just roughly? I don't need to know to the dollar.
Yes, through the chair, I believe you're in the right ballpark.
So that's answered my question. I'll leave my comments till later. Thank you.
Councilor Wells.
I'm just trying to get clarification on what's happening here. Is this an extra $60,000 that you didn't know that you needed at budget time? Is that basically what I need to know for clarification purposes?
Through the chair to Councillor Wells, at budget time, we did feel we needed it. Council chose to reduce the budget amount for this area.
Clarification again, you came in asking for the extra $60,000 and council said no. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I'm not sure exactly how much the budget was, but there was an additional amount, yes.
Thank you. Councilor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to maybe to Clark and James. James, in the last, first of all to James, I guess. Sounds like a logical expenditure to me, but can you tell me, James, in the last 2-3 meetings here, how much we've added to the levy? We've done a lot of things recently, I think, that we've added to the levy, and I'm a little concerned about that. for 2017. Any handle on that?
Through the chair, that's a good question, and unfortunately, I don't have a handle on that right now. Usually, we prepare that as a council-approved initiative for the following budget year. However, we can put together a list for you over the last, like, from what you requested over the last few meetings on these additional budget requests.
Okay, and, you know, I think back, you know, Norview, all these other things that come to mind where we've added money. What about, Clark, through you, the $60,000? What if we said, we're going to approve these, but you got to wait till we get the new budget? Would that in any way hinder any of your operation? If we told them we had to wait a few months?
Through the chair, I certainly think that the project proponents are all happy to be a part of the program. In some cases, it's likely that the projects won't want to wait. Some may want to, some may not want to be held back by waiting. But I'm sure we can say, yes, the 60,000 is there, but maybe you need to wait a while. But I think it would be good to know exactly when that time frame is.
And with the 60,000, you say you have some on the, we'll use the word, in the pipeline, correct?
So we have around, where was it here? It's in the report. Now I'm not seeing it. Oh, last page, of course. Yeah, around 52,000 is currently kind of hanging there waiting to see support, and another 8,000, which we anticipate will probably get additional applications. But yes, we're now standing at around 52,000 that's waiting.
So and that 52 is based on 8 applications, correct? The way the report reads?
Yeah, that would be an average amount, yes.
And what would be, well, it says 8 applications. I'm wondering what would be on top of, like 52,000 in grants, what would be the loan portion? Any idea?
I don't know that, but I could provide that information to you if you want it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Height, Councillor Height, and then Mayor Luke.
Don't pin that on me, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Through you to Mr. Hoskin. How much in funding is this tying up right now as far as the private side of the money being kicked out?
Well, I would say the last time we reported a kind of an incremental value, it was 8-fold. So if you were using that previous amount, then basically there's around 400,000 in private sector investment that's being held in abeyance until we make our decision.
But you need that increase on top of the 94.5 thousand to be able to free up the $400,000 investment. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So if we're getting 8 times the investment from the private side on this, do you think it's worthwhile to add more money than that?
Through the chair, yes, I believe it is. I think that there's a case to be made after we make this decision to drill down a little bit and do another review of this program just to see how we can maybe tweak it a bit to make it work better. But I believe we can. There is more opportunities to attract more investment with this program.
That sounds good, because I guess the upside here is that the tax base increases on these property values as they get modified, and we take in permit fees, so we really get our money back. Thank you.
Mayor Luke, I think you moved it and you want to speak
No,
to
I
it?
haven't moved anything yet, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, but usually you think like me. Not all the time. That's a good thing. I want to get going on the debate. I would like to move that we receive this report as information. And I am going to leave it at that, because personally, I can't support this money being spent at this time. Now, this is no fault of Clark's and his department or staff or anybody's fault that last year we spent about $200,000. At budget, we said This is the amount we're going to set aside. And I knew fully well, as much as I support assisting small business in this county, I have seen and you have seen the tremendous results and improvements. But in January, based on the money we had then, we decided that's going to be it. And when the money runs out,